Hey everyone, welcome back to Tales of Recovery. This is your host, Gris Alves, and my guest today, again, is my dear friend, Mimi Young. And we're going to continue with our 4-part series of Befriending Aging. Some of you have already met Mimi, heard her. She's been on the podcast a couple of times. Amazing artist, healer, beautiful human being that I have had the honor to learn from and just have a friendship with. So thank you so much, Mimi, for joining us today again.
I'm always so happy to be back. Thank you.
Yes. So I was telling Mimi that when I started one of your mentorships a couple years ago, I don't even remember how long, you recommended the book called The Cosmic Mother. And it was the most transformational book because as I was reading it, and it talks about, and I'll let you tell us what it talks about because you probably know it better than I do, but it was so confirming to me that I have known these things for so long that some of what the patriarchal or toxic religions or the systems that we've been raised in really oppress the wisdom of growing older, of allowing self-acceptance and self-love for our bodies and for the way that life goes, the process of life. Because I feel like what we've been doing or what I've been taught to do and what I saw from my grandmother and my mother and my aunts is to really fight the age thing. I don't want to be old. I want to look like I'm 17 forever. And, always this perfectionism. And then when it's time to get a wrinkle or when it's time to die, it's like, oh my, like no one's ready for it. And so this history that a lot of us have been robbed of, that I found in that book and through your teachings was phenomenal. So I'm very grateful for that. And that's what I wanted you to talk to us about. Like, what is your take on this culture that tells us that you have to get another facelift, and you have to keep up with, the Joneses looking 12 years old, and this ridiculousness that really is holding us back from a soft, enjoyable life, which is kind of that's what I want, I don't know. What do you think?
I love how you said a soft and enjoyable life. It's true. I feel that the kind of lives that we are taught that we are supposed to live, it has hardened us and has made us brittle. And we've lost any type of elasticity and, resilience ultimately. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. So for folks who haven't read the book, The Cosmic Mother, it's been a long time since I've read it, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's written by Barbara Moore.
A co-author, but I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true that there's actually another author. I think she was I think she had co-written maybe the intro, and she had supplied some art through the pages. So forgive me that I don't have the complete name.
Okay, I just went and got it.
So. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll let you read.
Yeah. The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth by Monica Sju and Barbara Moore. So yeah.
Okay. Amazing. And yeah, so this book really does intersect many things. And one thing that, obviously resonated with you is this idea that the youth and the youth phase of life and of nature is what's prioritized. And we can link this to, let's say, industrialization and capitalism, because the spring and the summer are viewed as the most productive seasons. And, the fall and the winter are a little less desirable. And you could also parallel that to a woman's body, how it's the spring and the summer phases of a woman that is deemed of value. And when she enters into her autumn and her winter, she is seen as a number of things that patriarchy invented, either, the crazy woman or the hysterical woman or the old woman that lives by herself with 100 cats or whatever, all these cliches that are actually not even really true. And so we, even as women, we have now feared that idea of being the old woman. And we now fear the idea of being the old woman because we know that she's not valued by society. We know that she becomes invisible. We know that she's seen as, let's say, crazy or angry or essentially no longer part of the regular conversation of being women. And I don't know about you, but I even feel it within, like when I'm speaking with other women, you know, I hear it when is like with, let's say, aunts and mother and so forth, this idea that there's a lot of critique about our bodies as we age, right? Like there's this idea that even though you and I were just like, well, yeah, let's have soft lives, but it's like, no, it's not something that we are encouraged to have soft bodies, that we want to have nice toned, hard, muscular bodies, not too muscular, because then that would be seen as something that's also no longer being a woman, right? Like, I mean, there's all these conditions associated with it, but also this idea of not to age, because aging means you're no longer beautiful. And if you're, the concept of beauty being what's deemed as what a woman needs to present to the world, because that is supposedly what is valuable. I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say about this. I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
So I'm sure that there's folks that are listening that understand completely what you and I are talking about. This idea that we should, I say this with air quotes, we should be gentle and kind to ourselves when we start sagging and softening and having lines and graying and so forth. And yet we all notice these things when we look in the mirror, and we all have feelings towards it. Oftentimes a little bit of fear or irritation. And then you beat yourself up because internally, at least for me, this is what I hear in my mind. Mimi, you're being a bad feminist. You're being a bad feminist for noticing that you have gray hairs. You're being a bad feminist for noticing and caring that you have a wrinkle. Yeah. And then so it's a very complicated internal dialogue, right? Like, it's like, I realize that I want to embrace aging, and yet I shame myself when I notice that I'm aging. I shame myself when I feel the urge to pull a gray hair out of my head, because there's that voice that's also saying, as a woman, you shouldn't be ashamed, because now, as in this era of being feminists, like, man, Mimi, you really suck at being a feminist.
It's that perfectionism,
right? Like, it's also kind of a patriarchal concept of shaming oneself no matter which choice I make.
And I think
so that's my question. Do you feel that?
I do. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, I'm definitely not, putting these podcasts out because I have Befriending Aging down. It's like a constant struggle. One of the things that I deeply care about is the inner aging, right? Like the inner knowing of, okay, this is a wisdom, and now I have more time here on this planet than maybe other people, and I can give my experience to younger gals, and I can hold other women that are not, in their 50s yet. But I do know that it's like an expansion, right? It doesn't all of a sudden, oh, I don't mind having gray hair. I mean, I have friends that have been like, that's it, I'm going gray, and they look amazing, and it took forever. I'm still like, well, I can't, I'm getting my hair done tomorrow, Thursday. I am. So befriending aging doesn't mean that I don't know about the gray yet, or that I'm not going to stop practicing Ashtanga yoga just because I'm older. I mean, I don't think it has to be one way or the other 100% right away. It's something that we're growing and stepping into. But I like the point that you bring out about not shaming myself for, oh, you're talking about befriending aging and now you're going to go do your hair. Well, so what? I can still be, I can still look cute. Beauty is something, I always have been kind of extravagant and pink and purple hair. And, if I want to do my hair, that's fine. I think it's how we tie it into really our essence and the way we move in our life without these things holding us captive. So it doesn't have to be an extreme of like, but I do see one of the things that I saw that was really sad for me was my mom, she was, like in her last 6 months of life, she would look in the mirror and say, oh my God, look at these wrinkles. This is horrible. And I'd be like, Mom, but you're 75. You made it this far and you're beautiful. Because eventually I don't think there's going to be enough Botox to not have wrinkles. And I am not getting surgery. And so eventually, because my mom never got a facelift. But her mother got like 3 or 4 of them, and other people in her family and her friends. She was just not about it. And it was a good example for me. But also, she was doing what you were saying. I'm not going to do that because it's ridiculous. But I'm also over here freaking out and looking in the mirror with all these wrinkles. She could barely talk towards the end, and my sister would come and give her little kisses, and she could barely talk. And she'd look at my sister and look at her eyes and tell her, there's a little cream that you can put in your eyes.
Oh my gosh. What?
I mean, the programming, it's like.
That's it. It's the immense brainwashing that we all have been indoctrinated with. It's very thorough. It's in us so deeply.
So it's like, how do we, which is why I love the history of these religions of the earth, right? These matriarchal religions, these connection to the elements and to the earth and to the water, and because that brings us more into who we really are, which is a seed, like a tree. Like, come on, what are we thinking? We are these rock stars that are invincible, that are never going to go back into the earth. And so, I guess utilizing this history, and you talk a lot about like the maiden, the mother, and then the crone, and how we have forgotten. I mean, I have 25-year-old friends that don't even know what a crone is.
Wow.
You don't know what a crone is?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm kind of a crone, so you kind of know me.
Right. Yeah. Like you're looking at a baby crone. Yeah.
So, what if, like, I don't know, what do you think about that? When did that end, or what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a systematic, and it was a process that shifted that land-based living where we were students of the earth. And somehow this idea of a science and a normative one way of thinking wound up replacing that. And it killed diversity. It killed, as in diversity of seasons, right? Like going back to like the forest. And if we're discussing like Chinese esoteric practice, it's actually 5 seasons. But regardless, how many seasons, there's more than one season. And there's more than one truth. And somehow along the way, something was implanted and replaced, that other way of thinking, that land-based thinking, that there's one truth, and that truth is called objectivity, right? Or maybe it's called science, or maybe it's called the church. I don't know. It differs a little bit, and they're kind of all the same at the same time. And that's when I feel when we really lost touch. And so for me, I oftentimes remind myself the best way to heal the ageism that I carry within, because we drank the water from everywhere, really. It's everywhere. That it's to become a student of the earth again, to really be open to what the earth has to say. And I feel like, one key example is to see that there's so many different forms of beauty. Like, it's not like roses are not the only beautiful flower that exists. There's so many different types of gorgeous flowers, and not all things that are beautiful are flowers. Some of them are grasses. Some of them are are shrubs, some of them are trees, and some of them are just rocks. Like they're not even plants, and they're all beautiful. And they all carry a resonance and a medicine that is uniquely them. And so why do I obsess about having to look like the rose that is the one idealized form of beauty? You know, eternally spring, eternally skinny, eternally, you know, with dark hair, let's say, or like not needing to color hair and such. I'm not coloring my hair, but I'm just saying all these things. It's just like, I feel being a student of the earth is a way to help me really regain and remember the original perspective.
Yeah. And I think we were talking about this before we began the recording, but there's such a craving now for people to go back into ancestrals and who are my ancestors. And whereas before nobody wanted to be, you know, a native, everyone wanted to be, no, I'm from Europe and I'm from England and now everyone's like, no, I want my roots. I really want to be a native. Where am I really from? And everything goes back to these land-based, you know, cultures. And I think that part of that longing is the shift that we're hopefully getting into. I think we are getting into, even though it seems overwhelming with everything else. There is, I see, and maybe it's because of the circles that I'm at, you know, mostly healers and people seeking wellness and saving the planet and back to land-based living. But I do see a longing for people to come back to this because it's just the other way of living, non-befriending aging, and the way that we're running is impossible.
It is.
To live a soft and enjoyable life, it's driving everyone crazy. People are committing suicide. Everyone's on antidepressants, tons and tons of pain medication overdoses. I mean, it's like, what's going on? You know, and so I think part of that, which is why the work you do is so important. And I'm so glad you're here sharing with us, because you do bring us back to, you know, the plants. Every time I see a plant, I think of you. I'm like, okay, now I talk to my plants. I mean, I did before when I was a kid, but then you kind of get caught up in this and forget about it. And now it's like, you know, you told me that my plant was the tulsi, and I have like this huge bush of tulsi growing outside now. And it's the one that doesn't even need much care. It's just like huge. You know, I make my lotions with it, and it's just so it doesn't have to be extreme, I guess. You know, little by little, we can move back into this. I mean, how is it for you? Like, how does your mom model, or your grandparents, walking into this or out of this oppression?
I'm not quite sure if they're walking out of it, in all honesty. And I think part of it is because, I mean, it's hard to say because I'm not them. Right. But from the outside looking in, I do see, like I'm thinking about my mother, she does still put an immense amount of emphasis on her skin. And it's difficult to tell if she's caring for her skin or if she's worried about her skin. Yeah. It's hard to say. And yeah, and you know, and I think about how I was brought up. And this is actually not just aging. This is this idea of a woman's body, yeah, and all the very different overlapping conversations about a woman's body. You know, I was really taught to hide my body growing up. I think she was just really, really worried that, because I mean, the thing she told me when I got my period for the very first time was, now you better not do anything stupid with boys. That was the one thing. Like, that was my menarche celebration, supposedly. Like, I mean, there was no, like, welcoming into womanhood and all these sorts of things. It was like, now don't do anything stupid with boys. And she was always actually the kind of person who encouraged me to wear clothes that were Black, because she felt that if I wore anything that was too eye-catching, that I might once again get into trouble with boys. You know, and I don't want to paint her as someone who is really oppressive, simply because, I mean, she came from that same place, right? Where, yeah. And I feel like I was really disassociated from my body for a long time, because for some reason I became terrified of it. And I viewed it as something that was potentially very dangerous. I couldn't trust it. And I didn't even understand that my body is actually not even it. My body is a her. My body is me. I am my body. Like I'm not me without my body. And that's the other piece, is because she came from, a religion that taught that the body was dirty and that your soul is what's good and your soul is what remains after you die. So, which already is teaching disassociation. So it took a long time for me to be like, oh, wow, this is my body, and I am my body, and my body is me, and my body does carry intelligence, and my body is connected to, much more ancient information than I give her credit for. Even though on some hands, like on the other hand, we did, like, I mean, growing up, we always talked about ancestors because that was just kind of the home that we grew up in. And yet that piece of when your body dies, your soul lives on, and, you know, and it's spirit and the soul that we need to focus on, not on the body. And yet at the same time, there was the fear of wrinkles, right? Like, I mean, it was just very confusing. It still is.
It still is, yeah. It's yeah, that's so interesting, because my mom, the same. Like, I remember getting my period, and I didn't get any of these, like, oh, we're gonna welcome you into womanhood, and everyone come into the tent, and you're now, you know, like a rite of passage and honoring it. No, it was like, I mean, she didn't even say anything. She called, I don't know, we were at my grandmother's house, and she said someone to get me some pads from the store, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, don't tell me. It was just, she was completely like separating herself from it. No, like, she was so disconnected herself from her body that she just didn't have the tools to embrace me and the connection that I was now going to have to mine. And, you know, even though I have a daughter and I've tried to do different and explain to her, there's so many things that trickle down. So there is a lot of work to be done in deprogramming, in remembering and connecting to our bodies. And also, I mean, the other thing I always think about is it's inevitable. There's going to be wrinkles eventually.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it is biologically impossible to stay a certain age forever.
Yeah. And it's also, I feel I have so much sorrow for something I saw about, I don't know, a couple months ago, that I was thinking about this series, and I'm like, this is important. I really want to talk about this. And it's really for me, right? I want to be able to be a wise elder that isn't having, you know, I think what brought this up is that I had a surgery and I had my implants removed. These implants that I put on 16, 17 years ago, when my mindset was way different. And now I'm like, why in the fuck did I ever do that? But whatever, you know, it was just, that's where I was at. And this is where I'm now, wiser, hopefully, and healthier now. I feel great. And part of that is like, what was I doing? And it's gotten me thinking about so much surgery, because as I was waiting for my doctor to do my checkup, he, first of all, couldn't believe I just wanted explants. He was like, well, let's put in some new ones. I'm like, I don't want anything foreign in my body. I just, no, just whatever, just make him healthy. I don't care. And people coming and going into his surgery office, young women, older women, faces swollen. I was like, oh, I can't believe this is like, it's such a big business. And then I find on Instagram, Madonna, of all people, who looks like an alien now. I was like, what? She pulled her face, like she had surgery, and she doesn't even look like Madonna anymore. And it was so disappointing for me. I mean, I know it's Madonna. I know she's in Hollywood, and I know she's into this thing. But honestly, dude, I grew up with that chick, and I loved her. I was like, yeah, go Madonna, badass. You do what the fuck you want. You know, she went in and did not care about, I mean, I don't know her personally, of course, but I mean, I thought I did. I had dreams that I did back in the 80s. But now I was like, dude, you have so much influence. You could be riding the wave of allowing other women that it's okay to get older. But now she's like, I can share. They just do not look real. You know, how can you be 75 years old and have that kind of skin? And so this is kind of the confusing thing that, you know, and we're old enough to kind of begin to understand it. But I see these 14, 15, 16, 18-year-old girls that are like getting all of these facelifts and fillers and this and that. My daughter lives in LA and she's like, Mom, everyone goes to these places and they all want to look like, they all look the same. And so, I don't know, I guess this is just kind of my urgency with this. Like, what in the hell? Who are we looking up to for this type of, and it's not that you look up to her, but it's like, that's who's out there. So I'm trying to find some people that are, you know, befriending aging. And, you know, there is one chick called My Wrinkles on My Scars, who's actually like, she's very stylish, but she just embraces her gray hair and these amazing wrinkles. And again, I don't know her personally. I don't know how her heart is. And maybe Madonna's amazing spiritually and doesn't give a fuck about wrinkles, but that's not what we're talking about here. I'm more about the land-based living old school elders that I want to become.
Yeah, I find that it's also confusing because I feel that a woman is criticized no matter what choice she makes. You know, she's criticized if she lets her hair go gray, and she's criticized if she, you know, if she gets interventions. Yeah. And I mean, really, like, I mean, in theory, yeah, like, I mean, Madonna can do whatever hell she wants. And yet I know what you mean, because we, at least like our age, like we really, really looked up to her growing up, and we felt that she did so much in some aspects. And then I guess deep down, we're craving someone, if not her, someone else maybe, to set the tone and be a badass in a different way. Maybe not a badass sexually, because I feel like a lot of progress has been made there in terms of expression, and just the freedoms to a degree. I mean, I don't think we're really there completely yet, but yeah, like we are craving for someone to sort of come in and say, guns a-blazing, and say, no, I'm going to be pro-aging, not anti-aging. I'm going to be pro-aging. Or, you know, these things here that are like wrinkly, they're actually called experiences. They're not called wrinkles. Like I need someone to say that. And yet there's a handful sort of on IG. I don't remember their actual profile names that are sort of doing that. And yet they're still kind of keeping within the normative, because maybe they have gray hair, but they also have an incredibly fit body that if the photograph was cropping their face off, they would pass for someone who was 35 years old. Yeah. So there's still a piece where it's like, no, but actually that part is not even totally sustainable, even though they have gray hair. So I don't know. I mean, and maybe the listeners know someone that they can share, but even then, is one person enough? Like, we need a revolution. We need a lot of us, right? Because you can't just say one person, because that's placing a very unbearable demand on one human being. And I guarantee that person also is struggling internally, because it's impossible not to struggle. I mean, I don't know one woman who doesn't have an issue with one part of her body, at least one part of her body, usually more. I don't know one. And so I do think part of it is ultimately we have to be willing to talk about it, because when we talk about it, the silence is not keeping us in shame. And there's a freedom to discussion, a freedom to vocalize and say, hey, like, this is a legit thing that I go through. And I feel that if enough of us talk about it, and the people at the right places, I feel that schools have to talk about this, because children are shaped by school. They spend like 6 fucking hours a day there. 5 days a week for the most part. And to think, just like I feel that schools need to do better on any type of bias, like bias-based perceptions and bias-based decision making, which of course not only includes racism, but ableism and, sexism and careerism, even eventually, and all these sorts of things. I don't know, like it has to be something that's done collectively, but I do think it has to start from grassroots, because how else is it going to start? Because there's so much at stake. Like, think about Clairol. Like I'm thinking about Clairol because that's what I grew up with, watching all those commercials and watching all those ads and magazines, like those little, hair dye in a box. Like, there's a huge consequence if there was enough disruption. If enough women said, I don't really want to do this anymore. I don't really want to color my hair anymore. And not to say there's anything wrong with coloring my hair, but I'm just saying that if there was a movement towards that, there's some economic repercussions. And I think that's why it's designed to kind of there has to be a pretty drastic change. But I don't know, I can expect Madonna to change it. I think we all have to do a little bit.
Yeah. And, I didn't expect her. I was just like, when I saw her picture, I was blown away. Like, what? And I don't really follow her all the time. So it was like, wait a minute. That was like insane. I mean, and I showed my daughter. My daughter's like, oh, she looks great. I'm like, wait, but you don't know how she used to look before. She was beautiful. She always has been. I thought she was always beautiful.
Totally.
So, but yeah, and I don't, I guess I don't, you're right. It's like this whole savior thing, right? Like, somebody come and save us. So sorry, Madonna,
Oh, no.
But I know what you're saying. It's like,
I wasn't trying to shame you. I was just like, no, because we all think this way, and it's so complicated. And we're like, we should, it's going back to the I'm being a bad feminist thing, but it's like, is there such thing as a good feminist? I don't know.
No. And it's also like the resources, right? Like, you might have a ton of money to be able to do that surgery, and you might not. So you're befriending aging a little bit faster than somebody who has the resources to go get a facelift, for all these things in their face. But I think, I guess doing this, I'm committing to befriending aging and still owning like my power, my strength, that I would like, that I love dressing up and fixing my hair or whatever. But to honor the wisdom of it, right? Beyond beauty standards and L'Oreal and Clairol and all these absurd, expectations of what we're supposed to look like. And the horror that those expectations cause for so many of us, I for sure have an eating disorder. Or had, on and off. And now I've been working for 20 years on eating because I love my body, not because, oh, that's going to make me fat, or oh, that's going to make me sick, Yeah. So I'm very aware of how I have been affected by this. And so beyond that, it's like finding, I guess, the beauty, the art in these ancient traditions, coming back to like the great cosmic mother. Like, what did it mean to be a maiden? And then what did it mean to be a mother? And then what did it mean to be a crown? And what you said in the beginning is, can we be held in these 3 stages of life by other women instead of criticized or not allowed in because you don't look a certain way?
Right. Yeah. And that happens too, right? Like it's I see this in spiritual circles, how it's only like you kind of have to have the right look, or you need the right ticket to entrance. It certainly has happened to me where I show up to like a quote unquote sister circle. And, I made the mistake of wearing leather. Like, like it's like stuff like that. And it's like, okay, we can talk about that. We can. And then yet there's this other piece where it's like, where's the, like, it can be some of these spiritual circles can be incredibly judgmental, and totally not, doing what they say they do. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about something else too, because I think this part is actually also important in terms of befriending aging. It's and I say this because you have a son and I have two sons.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I actually think it's really important to raise all children, not just daughters, but all children to befriend aging so that they, my boys, when they grow up to be men, are not viewing the world and viewing a woman's worth through her body and through her age and through how she looks in relative to her numerical age. For instance, I've had to explain to my older son, my younger son's not at that age yet where I don't really talk about, like, it's not, I kind of just listen to what they're saying and then I sort of respond. But, I pointed out how saying something like, well, she looks really good for a mom is like deeply, deeply harmful. Right. Like, and I feel that we can't expect, yes, this is obviously befriending aging is going to have to be spearheaded by women, but for it to really change, the men have to get on board too. Yeah. And I feel like boys have to be the ones that get on board because those are the ones that we have more influence over than men, than grown men as parents.
As parents.
And I feel it's an immense responsibility for me to raise feminist boys.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. It was intense when my mom was always been, she never got any facelifts, but she was always like, she would get up super early, put on her makeup, look stunning, whatever. She was always very, very stylish. And when she had the stroke, like one day to the next, she was like, ugh, the hell with it. She was in pajamas, her hair was sticking up, no more makeup. And we had to like really, really like make her do it a couple of times to just dress up to go to whatever event. She didn't go to that many after the stroke, but during those 2 years, it was a deterioration. And my son witnessed all of it. And, they didn't want to go and be like, no, we're going. We're going to witness your Abu, your grandmother, however she's at, with wrinkles, and just like laying around in the bed. And towards the end, she even lost her teeth. Mm. And I kept bringing them. And I'm kind of like a death doula. So I focused it more on like, this is what happens when we're dying. It's okay. It's okay. But yes, to bring that back into even a younger age, because it's one thing to accept when there's a little older lady or an older man or an older person that's leaving. Oh, okay. They're dying. They had their life. They're old. If you're in contact with death in that way, which is sacred to me. But yes, so I do hear you in the challenge to teach him even at my age. I hate it when they say that. What the MILF?
Oh my God, right? Like, ugh, yeah.
Oh, go fuck yourself. Yeah. What the hell?
Like, it's like, and yet they're just drinking the same soup, right? They're drinking that same Kool-Aid. And yeah, there's the culture of whatever TikTok or whatever stuff that they consume. There's a culture of their peers. And then here's me, mom, trying to say something about what it means to be a woman, and that intersection with aging, that intersection with size, the intersection of just so many things. But I shouldn't say that I don't talk about those things with my 6-year-old, because I do, but just, it wasn't about that specific comment, she looks good for a mom kind of thing. And actually it wasn't even my older son that said that. It was a peer of his. And later on that evening, I just sort of pulled him gently aside and I said, I kind of want to talk about that, but I didn't know if it was appropriate to talk about it when and like single that one child out. And so I just thought, I'm not going to say anything then. And so I talked about it later, and I sort of walked my son through just the understanding of why a word like that or an expression like that, MILF or whatever, can be harmful. Even though they didn't intend it that way, like they think they're complimenting. And yet I see grown men doing the same thing. And in fact, I've actually had women say those things.
No, and women taking it in, like, I mean, to be honest, if somebody tells me, oh, you look great for a mom, I'll be like, yeah. Wait. Without even realizing you're already taking the compliment as, oh, you look younger. And part of it could also be because it's good to be alive and it's good to have strength. Mm-hmm. I like living on this planet, hugging my kids and my husband and my friends and laughing and eating the food. This sensory experience of being a human, the human experience is kind of cool. So it could be something of wanting to grasp onto this as long as we can. So I'm guessing part of befriending aging is also doing the work of unattachment and beginning this process of understanding that this isn't going to last forever, which is so hard because that is some deep internal work that not many really want to go do. Everyone's like, no, hold the time. I want to be 12 forever.
Right.
And as if looking good is going to avoid that. Maybe that's part of the problem.
I feel that we don't, as a collective, that we're being fed through Vogue or maybe not Vogue. I mean, I don't even I just mean the fashion and the beauty and the media that is the channel to perpetuate fashion and beauty. I think there's a lot more options now, a lot more than before. Way more certainly than, in the 80s. Yeah. However, with that said, I also feel that I feel that ageism is the one thing that hasn't really been widely embraced. I really don't see that many campaigns with older women, and older men and older people in general. Really, it's like, I don't see that much. And I wish, and so maybe it's just about having to demand that more. And I mean, I don't really engage so much on those media, like those specific channels anyway. I am actually someone who because the thing is, and the reason I say this is that if we are fed a standard of beauty, then we wind up developing a palette for that beauty. And that's why I really think sometimes we have we develop a palette for a trend, because that's all we see it. And then all of a sudden it grows on us or whatever. So what I would love to see is more examples of what aging looks like.
Yeah.
And for it to not be called the older woman doing a photo shoot. Like, she's just a woman.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to be called an older woman, just like how you don't have to be called that whole beautiful for a mom. Like what? So when when a person becomes a parent, they no longer can look beautiful.
Yeah.
And then there's also this other innuendo of the older you are, the more sacrificing you are. Look at this idea, or maybe when you become a mother, you become sacrificing. So therefore you can't possibly be beautiful and a mother, because if you're a beautiful mother, that must mean you spend a lot of time in front of the mirror. And if you spend a lot of time in front of the mirror, you must be really negligent of your children. So the vain mother is a bad mother. Do you see how there's these weird, innuendos, and it's so fucked up. It's just so it's kind of like, if you're too beautiful as a mother, if you're too hot as a mother, then that's actually a bad mother. What the fuck? Anyway.
So much violence.
Yes, it is. It is so violent.
Yeah. And it's funny how you're mentioning that, and I'm like, oh yeah, that is how people think. And then whoever isn't doing that, and a lot of times I feel like, well, you're just criticizing that mom. I'll have friends call me and be like, can you believe what this woman is posting? And she looks like this, and she's working out, and where are her kids? Exactly what you just said.
Always where are the kids? What? That is so violent.
And it's also first of all, unfollow her. Second of all, why are you criticizing her? She's got her shit together. She's putting it out, or at least it seems like it. Who cares? So releasing that part of it too, that judgment of others, if they're doing well, if they're whatever, we're not doing well, but pretending, Because I think we're all struggling. I mean, some of us maybe have put in a bit more work than others, have a little more practice in being soft, but in general, everyone's struggling. But yeah, that whole vicious cycle of like, well, I'm going to judge everything that everyone else is doing and then judge myself. Yeah. I think that's what it comes down to, is this befriending aging thing, is ahimsa, like non-violence. Can we stop being so violent? And maybe this isn't like a huge catapult for some amazing movement, but us, like whoever's listening to you, whoever's listening to me, whoever we're around with, we can begin at least to befriend aging ourselves and to know. I mean, I loved being in your class when you were talking about the crone and the wisdom of, and it's been cooking for so many more years and creating medicines for so many more years. And it's had so much experience. They laugh at some of the troubles that maybe like a younger might have. Maybe not laugh at her, but like they know.
Yeah, it's like a soft chuckle, right? Yeah. Like, because they've been there. They have been there. One thing I've realized about judging, when I catch myself judging, and of course we all do this, what it is, like, I'm going to go back to the example of, oh my gosh, like, whoa, like, how can she look that way? Where are the children? Let's say, let's just say, let's just use that as an example. If I were to catch myself having that judgment, I feel that the judgments are really, they're actually powerful tools if we learn how to befriend even the judgments and ask, why am I having this judgment? Oh, I'm having this judgment because I've internalized this arbitrary rule that a woman needs to be this way. Okay, so it's actually not my issue with her. It's my own unhappiness that I have to obey this rule, and I'm resentful that she is disobeying it. That's really what it is.
Yes.
I should celebrate that she is brave enough to be like, fuck it. I am not going to obey that rule. And I admire her strength. So I'm going to ask myself if I can also challenge that rule and be like, fuck it too, and join her. I'll put on the red lipstick with her together.
Yes. I've been wearing a lot more red lipstick now. Yes. I used to not wear it because, the little wrinkles, but then they have these amazing ones that don't go all over the place. And now I'm like, and even if they do, who cares? I want to have fun.
Exactly.
And I don't want to obey the rules. So maybe that's what, that's a great statement that you just said. And so instead of judging, can we just notice, do you really like these rules? Don't obey them. They suck. Who's benefiting it?
No one is. Well,
I mean, that's what Golden would say.
Some companies. Yeah.
Who benefits from my self-loathing? Is her statement.
Yeah.
Claire does.
Exactly. It is. It's all those companies that are marketing fear at us.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So how else do you teach your men children, like your boys, about, besides just bringing up these conversations, like, I'm wondering what would be better, I suppose, tools or conversations to bring up with them about this. Hey, listen, these girls, I guess it's hard because my son's 16 years old. Like, what am I going to tell him? Like, whoever you like one day is going to have wrinkles, and I don't want you to, leave her for the 12-year-old because you think, the young is, it's like, how do we, come around besides them watching us? Because I feel like the best thing is, one of the best lessons I guess I've learned is it doesn't matter what I tell them. It's kind of the way that I'm living my life. So they did see me care for my mom. But, they hear me going in the mirror like, oh, Lord, these gray hairs, I got to go get my hair,
Right. Yeah, I guess it's just living. Living, maybe witnessing conversations you have with other women in passing, you know, like how like maybe you're just sitting at the kitchen table having coffee with a girlfriend, and then they come in to get something, you know, that's in the same room where you already are. Maybe they hear a little bit of that. I think sometimes it's me having to share certain things in front of them, but not to them, but more so with my partner. And so I'll say something to him, to my husband, and then they hear it. And it's almost like, you know, it's almost like that becomes a lesson because they're hearing some type of discussion that's happening. It really does take a village. It really, really does take a village. And they don't want to hear it from me where like, I'm just pointing out every little thing that maybe is wrong with the world. Because I think it's easy for them to start thinking that I'm like a Karen mom, which I don't want to be, obviously, in their minds. And then they wind up sort of dismissing, right? Like, cause if you say too much, then it's that, but I also do think some things are worth actually saying aloud. It's, I don't know. I mean, I think, okay, this is not age, maybe it's a little bit intersecting with ageism, but I do remember a little while ago, my older son said, "Mom, I love how you're cool." And I was like, what does that mean to you? Like when you use the word cool, what exactly are you saying? Because I wasn't sure. And he's like, well, I like it how we can go thrifting together and like both find cool outfits. And I was like, oh, okay. So I guess it's the fashion piece, like for him. And, you know, he enjoys thrifting as well. And he's like, I also just really like your taste in music. And he's just like, yeah, a lot of moms from what my friends say that they don't really do those things. And so I don't think they think their mom's cool. And so I thought maybe that's another way to talk about ageism by saying like, you know, I still like music. Like, it's not like, you know, the minute your babies are born, you don't have taste in music anymore. Or like, you know, the minute your babies are born, you don't like thrifting anymore or going shopping and whatever. And it's just like, I still care about fashion. I see fashion as a way of self-expression, thrifting, the additional piece of no longer contributing to consumption, like new consumption, I should say, like, you know, like from raw materials. And, you know, like at one point, he probably never actually saw the appeal of thrifting. But now he does. Not so much. I mean, he understands the value of it from an environmental perspective, but actually I think for him at this age, the age that he's at, I think he's more interested because he gets to wear something a bit more unique and he has something that, you know, other people can't find at the mall. Right. I think that's why he likes it. And the perk on top of that is that there's an environmental benefit, but maybe eventually he'll really see the environmental benefit as the first reason of buying thrift or whatever. But anyway, so maybe that is something too, is just, you know, being, and then they can see those things.
And that can also be part of what it kind of comes back to what you talked about, breaking the rules, right? Because yes, you don't have to stop liking good music just because now you have a baby. You don't have to now just, you know, go to the museums and listen to classical music. I mean, maybe that's your thing, right?
Right. I also like classical, I should say. Yeah. But yeah, no, you're right. Totally.
I remember a long time ago, I was we went to this festival in Ensenada, and my mother-in-law back then was probably, I don't know how old she was, but definitely she was older than my sister-in-law and I. And she had these little ponytails, right? She did her hair in these really cute little ponytails, and she had her outfit, and she's very spunky. She has a really cute sense of fashion. And my sister-in-law was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe she's wearing those little ponytails. At her age, she shouldn't be doing those ponytails. Yeah. And I was like, what are you talking about? You can do ponytails till you're on your deathbed. Like, what kind of a rule, quote unquote, is that makes you then an uncool parent, or like a, you know, to say uncool parent, but in reality, to say somebody that's falling into these, you know, these cages of what you should and shouldn't be doing at particular ages. Yeah. You can't wear ponytails anymore. You can't wear jeans with little holes on them. You can't, you know, wear red lipstick if you're past
Right.
a certain age, or going to a specific place because you might get in quote unquote trouble. Man, I see so many women, especially Mexican women, still thinking those things. And it's like, what kind of Kool-Aid are you still drinking? It's 2021 already. But yeah, so I guess befriending aging means breaking some of these rules.
Yeah, breaking the rules. And really, ultimately, I think it's like you said, because we can't stop aging. Befriending aging is just befriending yourself.
Yeah.
In whatever season you're in whatever stage of life you're in. And enjoying each stage to its fullest, knowing that season is going to pass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Befriending yourself, as long as we're moving towards the direction of love, self-love first, and honoring the stages, the seasons. One of the things that was very impactful for me was when my mom she was really sick, and I knew, we just have to care for her and pamper her. But her whole family was like, no, take her to this therapy, go to here, move her to that, let's go to the show. And it was so overwhelming because I wanted to, do what everyone was telling me. And I'd go talk to her doctor and be like, they want my mom to go here and there and put on makeup and go to that concert and that show. And she's so tired. Like, she doesn't want to do anything. And so the doctors told me, listen, your mom is in a season now. She's already done and come and gone to all these places and traveled. She's in the season of cuddling up in the bed and taking little naps and eating chocolate or whatever she wants to eat.
I'm already in that season. I love it. Come on, cuddles and chocolate. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Maybe we have more seasons of chocolate. That's true. That's so wise. Maybe because I guess what the doctor was trying to tell me is like, just, stop moving and going. But if we can slow down and stop moving and going a little bit more before we're, 85 years old, getting ready to die, it would be great, because then we're befriending ourselves, we're slowing down, we're allowing the softness, we're not in this hustle to stay, hard and fit like Madonna in the 80s or whatever. So yeah, we're going to just have to befriend ourselves.
Befriend ourselves indeed. And to maybe hold each other accountable.
Yes. Well, thank you for this juicy conversation, which was, it's challenging. It's a challenging conversation. And so whoever is out there listening and this makes you think about it, let's, like Mimi said, hold each other accountable, support each other, notice when we're judging, check out if that judgment comes from trying to obey some dumbass rule, that who's benefiting from that rule anyway. Find ourselves, do the work, and come back to land-based as much as we can, land-based living, I suppose. And stay connected. Thank you, Mimi.
Thank you so much for today.
Yes, this was super fun. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Yes. And please share, subscribe, send us your input, and we'll see you guys next time on Tales of Recovery.